Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, and score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello, you're listening to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to West Lothian's finest football team, Livingston Football Club, proudly sponsored by Starnut Apparel. My name's Angus. Today I'm joined by what's left of Euan. Euan, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good, mate. Just for a bit of context of what's left of you. And yeah, I had a slightly eventful week last week. I decided to play dodgems with a Ford Focus whilst out running in Falkirk, and the Ford Focus won. So luckily, I am okay. I did have to have a wee trip to A&E, which lasted 13 hours.
For those who don't have the benefit of seeing what Euan looks like right now, he's got casts on all four limbs. He's been strung up. I'm actually surprised you've been able to get the computer working. You know, have you got like a big straw that comes at your mouth or something to tap the buttons?
Yeah, it's along those lines. It's nothing. It's nothing like that. Thankfully, I just a few cuts and bruises to show for it, so I was very, very lucky. But yeah, for anyone listening, don't try and take on a Ford Focus in the middle of the road. You will come out worse. Albeit I did leave my bony arse print in the car, so I did leave my mark on it, in fairness. But yeah, apart from that, all good. A Livingston victory at the weekend, a result as well, albeit only a point on the road for our women's team. So there's plenty of positives on this podcast for a wee change to talk about. But what about yourself, mate? How you doing?
Yeah, as you say, it's unusual that we've came in here, spirits are up, and we're both very much in agreement that we're very much looking forward to the game at the weekend as well, the trip, and yeah, whatever ensues there as well. So, you know, it's good to have that kind of optimism. It's good to be on here chatting with a couple of good results as well. So, yeah, hopefully it'll be a fun episode and more to come for the rest of the season as well. But as always, you can search for Talk Livi on your preferred podcast streaming site where you can follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also catch all our episodes that we've done today on there as well.
We'll kick things off by discussing how Livy ended their 17-game winless run in the Premiership with a crucial win over St Mirren as the Lions closed the gap at the bottom of the table.
Our women's side were on the road as they travelled to take on Glasgow Women, with the game ending in a stalemate.
And finally, we'll look ahead to Livy's trip to the Highlands as the Lions take on Ross County with an opportunity to lift themselves off the foot of the Premiership table.
An upturn in performances in recent weeks hasn't yielded the rewards, but the Lions managed to scrap their way to a crucial 1-0 victory over St Mirren at the weekend, ending a 17-game winless run in the Premiership. Euan, that obviously is a massive result. Just how pivotal could that be in our season?
Yeah, we spoke about the cup games being a bit of a release from that barren run in the Premiership. As you mentioned, there are 17 games without a win. And what you were desperately hoping for is that those wins in the cup, those performances in the cup, the manner of the victories as well, coming from behind, showing a bit of character, you were just begging that eventually started to reflect in maybe a few league results as well, turning in our favour. And when I was doing my prediction for the game, I was confident that we'd get something because I just felt like our performances have been decent in recent weeks. We have been playing a lot better. We've been creating opportunities. and it felt like it was coming. It felt like it was coming, and it felt like it was a matter of time. And there was also just that it has to come to an end at some point, and it did on Saturday. Albeit, I think we really, really had to grasp for it at the weekend. There, I think St Mirren was actually really impressed with St Mirren for the most part, which makes the reaction of their fans at the end of the game all the more baffling towards their manager, which we'll obviously come on to talk about. But I think with the ball, St Mirren actually knocked it about a fair bit more than I probably give them credit for at times. I think they moved the ball about. You could see that they're a very well drilled side, both with and with the ball. Their shape was always really good. You know, as soon as they lost possession of the ball, you saw the two wide players in Scott and Kilty kind of drop in to make that a four in midfield, and it was a flat five at the back. So they're a very well drilled side. But I think, if I'm totally honest, in the first half, I think for all the possession that St Mirren had, I actually think we probably created slightly better opportunities in the first half. And if you watch the sports scene highlights, it probably doesn't reflect how the actual pattern of that 45 minutes went, because it looks like we're battering St Mirren by the highlights. But I do think it is because we probably did create the slightly better openings. You know, Shinnie had a header which hit the post, albeit it was flagged offside for something earlier, and I think it was Tete Yengi earlier in the build-up. But there was a couple of times where Shinnie had come off the left-hand side and actually got in at the back post. Stephen Kelly had a good strike as well. We did kind of switch up that three in behind Tete Yengi at times as well. I think Shinnie started as a 10, Kelly started wide. I think they switched. I actually think the manager wanted to change up the formation probably about 20-25 minutes in, because we were struggling to get a little bit of a foothold at times in terms of possession of the ball. But we did kind of stick that out. But as I say, Stephen Kelly had a decent strike where Hemmings made a save. Shinnie again, another one where he had a head over the bar. And then probably the one save of note that Shamal Georges had to make was a long distance effort from Boyd Muntz, which thankfully the rebound fell to James Scott. He was flagged offside, but he put it well over the bar. And we did eventually get the breakthrough right on the stroke of half time. Good delivery from Stephen Kelly. It's broke to Io Obalai. I think Io's actually done really well to manufacture, get turned on the ball to get a shot at goal. It's come through a ruck of bodies, so it's pretty much a reaction stop at that point from Zach Hemming, and then Tete Yengi's on hand to fire it into the roof of the net. It's actually, I think Neil McCann talked about it, it's actually a good finish by Tete Yengi, because it's very easy just to go and fire that straight back at the goalkeeper, whilst he's had the intelligence to go and lift the ball whilst there's on the deck, and we get in at the break 1-0 up. And I have to say, I spoke about it last week before the game. I thought the manner in how we won that game at Firhill, the fan reaction on social media, I kind of thought there might be a bit more of a positive vibe at the game. And I feel there was certainly from my perspective, I felt like there was less negativity creeping in, even though we were struggling in that first half in spells. I felt like there was less of a negative influence coming from the stand onto the players. And obviously, getting that goal in the stroke of half time, it's the first time we've been in front in a game at Livingston, gone 1-0 up in a game since that victory against Motherwell all the way back in October.
We didn't score in the first half of that game, did we?
No, it was both in the second half. Both in the second half. So it's the first time we've gone 1-0 up in a game at home
Season.
since that game. But yeah, I think the second half, again, we were made to work very hard for our 3 points. And again, I think we showed a bit of character, because again, we faced a bit of adversity. You know, Jason Hope, of all the players that might have made a mistake that led to a goal, he's left his back pass short. Boy, Lewis Jameson's got through on goal. It's a big save from Shamal George in the first instance, getting down. Then Jason Hope's made a fantastic tackle on Mikael Mandaron as well in terms of recovering. And then you've got Michael Nottingham chucking his body on the line, getting it clearance off the line from Greg Kilty. That phase of play epitomised our defending at the weekend. I thought we defended our box really well, but it was a case that players were chucking themselves, bodies on the line, throwing themselves in front of absolutely everything at the weekend. As I say, we kind of faced that little bit of adversity again. The penalty that gets given. I'm at the opposite end of the ground from you, Angus, but as soon as David Carson went to ground, I just could sense that there was something in it. Having seen the replays, I do think it's incredibly soft and minimal contact.
It's exactly one of those penalties you expected it was going to be when Carson went to ground there, and the reaction for the boy. There's no way that Carson hit him that hard to garner the flailing about and stuff like that. But what does VAR love to do is to find an incident, slow it down, freeze frame it, up, a little bit of contact, yep, that's a penalty, because contact in football means penalty these days, never mind, is that actually a foul?
As I say, a panic station set. If anything, I think it's clumsy by David Carson going to ground. I think, I always talk about this, he's given the referee and the VAR officials a decision to make by doing it. Albeit, do I think it's soft? Do I think Olasanyo's played for it? Absolutely. I agree with that. But if that was at the opposite end of the park, what would we be saying? So it's one of those ones. I think it was clumsy by David Carson, but I'm going to give a lot of credit to Shamal George. I think there's been a lot of stuff in the press this week about how his mum's kind of suffering with a bit of ill health. I believe she's suffering from cancer, which he was talking about, and she was up to watch him this weekend. And I've been critical at times of Shamal George in terms of not digging us out a hole at times this season, and even last year as well. Whilst I think at the weekend, you can't dispute that. He dug us out a hole at the weekend. He made a couple of really big saves, and no more so than the penalty. I think it played into our hands that Mark O'Hara's typically their penalty taker. He's out injured, I believe, at this moment in time. Greg Kilty's been taking him in his place. He'd come off at this point. So it was Mikael Mandron that stepped up, and Shamal George has produced a massive save. And I don't know about you, Angus, but when that penalty was saved, I just felt like this is our day. This is our day. Just had that vibe about it. It just wasn't falling for St Mirren, and certainly a few St Mirren fans I know kind of said the same thing. And then we almost got a worldie of a second goal where Hemmings made a kind of poor clearance that's fallen to Stephen Kelly, and he's almost managed to lob him from a good 30 to 40 yards, but it's just crept by the post. But there was still a couple of hearts and mouth moments at the tail end of the game. Mikael Mandron had one where he was at the back post. Don't know how he's missed the target from a couple of yards out. And Charles Dunn had one as well, which was kind of came through a ruck of bodies, and he's dragged past the post in the end. But it was a really dogged performance by us at the weekend, and just so desperately needed. But I think a big bit of credit has to go to the players for digging in there, showing that effort. And do you want to know, I'm delighted for the manager as well, because he's, to put it bluntly, he's taken a lot of shit, not just off us on this podcast, but a lot of our fans. And you could see how much it meant to him at the end of the game as well. He was absolutely over the moon. And I think he made a tactical tweak in the game as well, second half, where he did go to a back five to kind of try and shore us up a little bit, because we were under the cosh at times. And I think we managed the game very, very well in terms of seeing it out. And as I say, it was just a really dogged performance. But what a lift it's given the place. Again, just looking on social media, the reaction after the game and how everyone's so excited for the game up at Ross County this weekend. I'm always typically quite excited for the trip to Dingwall. It's one of my favourite away games. But, there is a buzz about the place again, and it's just nice to see. And yeah, a fantastic result, which has got us back in there fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. Full credit to the team for, that kind of battling performance. And it's one of those kind of performances you've seen over the years where maybe not necessarily been the prettiest in the eyes, or, the other team have had opportunities, but we've been efficient at home. We've taken the chance that we've had in their final third, and we've defended resolutely in our own back line. And, to get a clean sheet like that as well is great credit, because St Mirren are having, a good season. They'll probably feel hard done by it, but that's the kind of performance that St Mirren have had a lot this season as well, to be fair. I don't think many fans would disagree that, St Mirren have probably became that team in the league who are kind of hard to break down, and will have that quality in the attacking third, and that can really punish teams. You've seen that a lot. That's why they're sitting in the top six currently right now. So yeah, absolutely massive. And as you say, sets up the game next weekend to something really spectacular, in all honesty. And it's good to see that these kind of last couple of results has garnered such a great interest. It was looking so doom and gloom at one point where it's like with attendances drop and stuff like that. But it's a great pleasure that we're able to have. There's buses going up. There seems to be so many people like traveling up to their own, for the furthest away day of the season, and we don't have that a support that's massively heralded. But I think that even the fans in the last couple of games have helped make a difference in terms of the kind of performance. But yeah, we kind of touched about St Mirren just there as well. There was a strange reaction following the end of the game, Euan, where Stephen Robinson apparently confronts. I believe it does look to be just one fan, to be fair. For me, this is utterly ridiculous from the fan. We kind of just gave credit to St Mirren there for how they've been this season. They were top six last season. I would fancy them to probably finish in the top six again. They don't have the pull or maybe the money that some teams around them do, i.e. Hibs, Aberdeen, stuff like that. What on earth has garnered this kind of reaction from one of their own supporters towards Stephen Robinson? I think that is somebody who has got far too big for their boots, in all honesty. As you said, that's St Mirren finishing in the top six last season was the first thing they did so far. It was some great number of years, I believe.
Oh, so you're talking 30 years or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the highest league finish, yeah.
For them to now, for individual fans to be thinking that, they should just be showing up to our place and winning games like comfortably and all of that, despite having, chances that, maybe on another day they probably could have turned that around to 1-2-1. It just screams of a bit of being a bit too big for their boots and giving Stephen Robinson that. I think Stephen Robinson's more in his right to kind of have a wee go back, because you'd point to everything that's kind of happened this season and be like, well, are you not sort of satisfied with what's kind of going on so far? Every team in Scotland has their bad games and everything like that, but OTT reaction for me from the fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of faced it at the tail end of last season, and I know sitting in the section that I do, we're behind the home dugout, and I know Davey takes some amount of criticism sometimes, and there's a lot of the time I think it's really unfair and unjust as well. One a few weeks back when he was getting slaughtered because Andrew Shinnie missed a penalty.
Yeah.
What?
That maybe the exact same thing happened there, because Mandron missed one. Stephen Robinson, you should have walked up and slotted it home, mate.
But it's that way. You're going, well, how can that be put on the manager? I'm sorry, but Nicky Devlin had a bit of it last year. I kind of said on the podcast that if you're going to come to the games and give these guys stick in any other walk of life, in any other workplace, you'd be absolutely furious if somebody came up to you in your workplace and just started hurling abuse at you. I know I'd feel like that. So if you're going to dish it out, expect it back is the way I look at it. And St Mirren, obviously it's a disappointing result for them, right? They're flying high in the league this year. They're in a really good position in terms of going for potential European football this year. In reality, they were favourites for that game, coming to our place in our run of form. On another day, they go and win that game. They created it. As I say, I think that's our worst performance since the winter break with the ball. I don't think we did a great deal in possession, but on another day, St Mirren go and win that game. They created ample opportunities, good opportunities in the game, in particular in the second half, that they would go and win that game. However, we've defended our box really, really well. Is it the boy O'Carroll, who's the assistant manager at St Mirren, kind of came out and said that after the game. He kind of complimented how we defended our box, and it's just one of those days. And as you say, it's a bizarre reaction from the St Mirren fan. I do think it's as you say, a very small minority in amongst that support.
I think it was just, well, the video made it look as if it was just one bam.
Yeah, one bam. But there was a kind of sad incident after the game as well. And by the way, this isn't us trying to tarnish St Mirren fans. Just want to make that very clear. I know a number of St Mirren fans, and in fact, our office
one bam and then a group of wee idiot lads.
Yeah, but my office for work is still based at St Mirren, so I actually know a few folk who work there. It's a right good football club, and there's a lot of passionate fans and very good folk who follow the football club. So I'm sure they're absolutely disgusted by it. But the disabled supporter who had goods that he'd bought from the club shops taken off him after the game. It's been really good to see the reaction from fans of both clubs and the reaction of both clubs in terms of covering the cost for it. Also, I believe Keith Lasley over at St Mirren offered to reimburse the cost. However, they decided to make a donation to Kick Mental Health, so that'll go to a good cause as well. But yeah, just there's absolutely no need for it. And why in God's earth is that happening? Like after a game of football, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what's quite creeped in recently, and it does seem as if it's just like we idiot lads who think that they're mental and stuff like that. Because I was in the stadium bar, as always after the game. This time not drowning in the sorrows, but there suddenly
Makes a
was a
change.
yeah, exactly. There's like a sudden commotion like outside, and took a peek outside the door, and genuinely it couldn't have been laddies much older than 13, 14-year old, all dressed head to toe in black balaclavas and everything like that. And it's just like, what are you doing? And in all honesty, you see, like the scary thing of it is that so you've got all these laddies who are, covering their faces up and stuff like that. It only takes for one of them to be kind of, despite being younger, to kind of be built to resemble kind of like an adult or a young adult, essentially. It only takes somebody one time to run into the wrong crowd, and suddenly you've got, you know, children who have been battered by, adults. Obviously, that's probably not going to happen with Livingston, but you can imagine some other clubs out there. There's groups of fans who might be looking for that kind of stuff in that as well. It's like a weird kind of scary thing for me thinking about this, but just before the people's own safety themselves, because as soon as something actually does kick off, then it's going to go awry and it's going to be a negative impact of the game there. But as St Mirren fans and that are all pointing out in that, it is very much like a wee small group of people who are kind of doing this, and they're bringing a shame to their own club, and they would happily see them out. So yeah, fair play to St Mirren for the way that they've kind of reacted towards this, and yeah, the gestures by the clubs have been tremendous to see as well. But aye, it's something that this wannabe hard man kind of thing that's going on. It's I don't know. It's a really weird kind of social issue that's kind of happening right now. I don't know if it's like a wider thing that talks about the kind of like youth and like kind of the country today, where it's like, can you really punish them and stuff like that? So they think that they can kind of go and do whatever they want. But again, it only takes one incident to kind of cause something that gets out of hand.
Yeah, it's an incident you don't want to see after games, during the games, before the games. But to try and not end it on a sour note, let's get back to what was a fantastic afternoon in terms of a result for Livingston. And was there any kind of standout performances for yourself, Angus, over the
There's
course of the
actually one
afternoon?
thing that was doing my head in the entire game, Ewan, and the refereeing performance I thought was absolutely dreadful on Saturday. Every time we got a goal kick, the ball would go up to the park. At least one St Mirren player would grab a hold of Yengi, and another one would drop off to win the header. And the referee never called this one time. Marcus Fraser is the absolute epitome of this thing that kept on happening. And what makes it funny though is that it's his fault that we get the goal, because instead of defending the corner and going for the header to try and put Oblai off, he just grabs a hold of him. And that's when he handballs it. That's when it basically controls it into the path of Io, who can get the shot away. And that was just doing my head in the whole game. But it's one of those performances by a referee, though, where he's kind of based his decisions off of size. Teddy Yengi getting grabbed at every opportunity, and then like the handful of times that he kind of did it back, foul given straight away. That was really doing my head in. And it got to the point where, so the guys I sit with for the GS team and all of that, they don't seem to think that I'm quite an angry person, but they were like, they were,
I've seen you a couple of times, by the way, at games. Actually, you are quite angry.
I'd be like, is it a consistent thing?
Not all the time.
Yeah.
I sit next to Callum Watt, who is the angriest man on the planet. So
So yeah, so they could, I guess they could tell by my reaction that it was a bit of an abnormal kind of decision making there. But yeah, to go back into it, I just kind of had to get that out just because it's been eating me up for so long since the game. Up Marcus Fraser for giving us the goal basically for the exact same thing. But yeah, for ourselves, obviously kind of touched on Shamal George, absolutely massive for him. Great to see him have that kind of moment. Obviously meant so much to him with off-field kind of issues and stuff like that as well. He's taken kind of a lot of criticism from fans and stuff like this season. But yeah, he really stepped up to the plate there, and earned us a good 3 points as well. In all honesty, the entire back line deserves credit as well. You're probably looking at that, the back four of Sangari, Nottingham, Obalai, and Jamie Brandon. And if we'd started off the season with that, Ewan, I think a lot of fans would have been quite worried, to be honest with you. I think, the likes of Sangari and Michael Nottingham have had, a bit of criticism in terms of like the recruitment of players this season, and that you've got to give them great credit for their performances there. I think Sangari is kind of an awkward player, but at left back he actually does seem to have a decent kind of level of awareness. There's a good couple of crosses that came in that he was recovering very well, and he actually has got like a decent ability to beat a man as well. And I think that maybe that area is where he's more better suited than in the middle of the park, where you're wanting somebody to be maybe a little bit more technical. But he's got good height in that, can win aerial duels in that. Michael Nottingham as well. I think he seemed a lot more comfortable. He made a massive save off of the line. I Wobble is probably your number one centre half at the time. Kind of showed that on Saturday there. Handled the physical threats of St Mirren very well. And yeah, Jamie Brandon's just somebody who gives us all. As a fan watching on the side, that's all you can ask for. His defensive capabilities and his attacking capabilities. He's a very, very worthy player, I'd say, these days. So yeah, full credit to that back line. We've obviously had a tough season in terms of trying to keep goals out in that, and yeah, they deserve great credit for what they've done the last weekend.
Yeah, as I say, I kind of touched on Shamal George, and given what's going on in his personal life just now, I think that's massive credit to him, and hopefully that gets him to kick on a little bit more at Livingston, and he can start producing those moments where he's winning us points, he's grabbing us points from difficult positions. As you mentioned, I think you need to give the whole back four a bit of credit for the performance at the weekend. I've spoke numerous times about Jamie Brandon. I feel like he's a proper Livingston type of player, right grafter there. I actually think he probably doesn't maybe get the credit he deserves. I think he's actually really good on the ball. I think he's very composed when he's in possession. His technical ability is actually very good, and I don't think he gets credit for that sometimes. Michael Nottingham, I don't know if it's because a lot of the game on Saturday was in front of him, but because I do worry a little bit in terms of that pacing behind when we are defending maybe a little bit with a little bit of a higher line. But I think Michael Nottingham had a really solid game at the weekend. I Obalai as well. Don't think he put a foot wrong vast majority of the game. But probably the one that I would have given most credit to is probably Sangari. As you mentioned, he's meant to be his kind of natural position as a central midfielder, but you kind of talked a little bit about his ability to beat a man, his kind of athleticism. We saw that in little bursts when we played Celtic earlier in the season at home, in terms of his running off the ball and getting in behind, that kind of athleticism. And he shows a bit of that from left back when he has played there in recent games. And I don't think he put a foot wrong all afternoon. And that's credit to him, because I do think he's a player that does need a lot of coaching through a game. Again, I sit behind the home dugout. I hear Davey a lot during games. So I think Mo is that type of player that does require that extra bit of coaching. So in particular with him playing out of position, I think he maybe has slotted in there a few times through his career. But I think he was excellent over the game. But it was a right good team performance. And Tete Yengi, I know he's grabbed the goal, but I think he, again, just put in a tireless shift up the top end of the park. Very physical back three in Dunn, Gogic and Fraser, and as you mentioned, they were very physical with him over the course of the afternoon, but I think he gave as good as he could give in terms of matching them up and dragging us up the park at times. So I think it was a right good team performance at the weekend, and what you're hoping is we can take that into the Ross County game. But we'll come on to talk about Ross County, but let's not think because we've won one game in the league all of a sudden we are the favourites going up there. It's anything but. but let's get a really noisy support to follow the team up to Ross County, get right behind them because it is a huge, huge game. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
The Lionesses were on the road as they travelled to take on Glasgow Women. It would end goalless as our ladies did manage to end a run of back-to-back defeats in SWPL 2. Angus, I think you've declared yourself as player of the match for this one because of your role in that clean sheet. Give the listeners a little bit of an insight.
A coach is only as good as the players that he's got to work with. So I'd happily pass that on to the great work done by Shania. But yeah, on Saturday morning before the men's game, I actually got a text from Mike saying that Eric, our goalkeeping coach, wasn't going to be there, as well as the two sub goalkeepers. So they're wondering if I was able to slot in to help, warm up the goalkeeper. And I was like, at first I was like, I've got absolutely no idea what to do there, but sure, more than happy to help out. It'll be a fun experience. And then I got sent like all the stuff that they usually do. Did I understand most of it? Not really, but I was like, cool. Shania will hopefully keep me on track. But yeah, it was. You've obviously done a lot of coaching in your time, Euan. I had no idea that goalkeeping coaching was so intense. I was knackered. I was doing so much kind of running about and everything like that. And then, it kind of culminated with the shooting drill. Our goalkeeper Shania goes in, maybe about 1:45, but the players were still doing a shooting drill. So I found myself in goals getting absolutely barraged by so many shots. And I don't know if this is just the players, just trying to take like a hit at me or something like that, but there seemed to be an extra.
It definitely is. You
There
come
seemed
on
to be
this
an
you come on this
extra.
podcast and criticise their performances, and then you go and stand in the middle of a set of 11-a-side goals. Of course, they're going to start pinging shots at you.
They there was definitely like an extra bit of venom behind a lot of the shots for sure. And there was one that hit me like square in the thigh, and I actually still have a little bit of outline of the ball like on me.
Mite or
Like
tattoo?
genuinely, I was like, what the hell? Also, I do have a little bit of a bone to pick though with the team for that. So once they found out that I was the one who was warming up Shania, apparently a lot of the players were quite surprised to hear that I played football. They just think I'm some sort of geek who just does like the media stuff or something like that. So I was a bit taken back by that after hearing that. So I'll put out the open challenge if they want me to come down and train the rest of the team and stuff like that, and I'll show them a trick or two. But in terms of the actual game itself, Euan, I'm glad that we had that little anecdote to kind of talk about because, yeah, not much happened, to be honest with you. A 0-0 draw, a game that was really lacking any sort of kind of attacking quality. I think we've talked about it a couple of times here, Euan, that since that kind of winter break, we've conceded a lot of goals early on. We really walked the tightrope for that in the first kind of 3 minutes as well. And they got a corner where they hit the bar directly from it. And then the resulting corner that came from the clearance of that, Jess Murphy had to head the ball off of the line from about, a yard out. God knows how actually were able to put it over from there. But that was the kind of the two moments in that first half where a real goal scoring opportunity was. I think the only other one that came was again for Glasgow Women, who a corner broke down again to the back post in the last year. I think it was Patterson hit the ball over from probably about 6 yards. So we're maybe a little bit fortunate there that Glasgow Women weren't properly taking their chances. I do think though that in that first half we did show some good instances of being a wee bit more kind of calm and composed in the ball, and a good couple of passing moves that ended up us getting into the final third. But it's just that lacking ball, the final ball, that was really really lacking in the end. And in all honesty, going into the second half, Ewan, there's really really not anything to kind of talk about. Both teams really really struggled to kind of break the other down. Both defenses were kind of resolute. I think there's a few times that we ended up getting into the final third, but again, like we weren't able to find somebody with a cross, or the final pass for somebody to have a shot wasn't coming off. Like I think we had a couple of chances through like Euan Murphy and Barry Monroe, but didn't hit the target. I think Beth Mackay had like her only shot on target, which she's been teed up by Jen Dodds, and it's a kind of comfortable save for Kim Ramsey. And then at the other end, I don't think Shania's been kind of brought into action too much. She's came off the line a couple of times to thwart a couple of counter attacks, as well as Jess Murphy making a couple of good last ditch challenges. So yeah, I think a draw is very much kind of a fair result, I guess, on the proceedings. I guess if they'd scored that early goal, it would have been hard to have seen us come back into it. So I guess that there'll be some disappointment, that not that because we've played one of the teams who's lower in the league, I don't think we should ever be showing up somewhere with the thought that we're going to win a game, but we didn't do enough in that match to merit getting a 3 points at all, which I think will be seen as a bit of a missed opportunity, especially with the kind of points that have been dropped in the last couple of weeks as well. It's kind of a disappointing outing. Yeah, not really much to talk about on that front.
I suppose there's a couple of positives you can probably take from that. Is one, it's ended that kind of run of back-to-back defeats in the league, so it's kind of stopping a little, I say a rot's setting in, but you know what I mean, kind of getting into that rut of results. And a clean sheet, I suppose, as well, having, you talked about conceding goals fairly early doors in a couple of the games since the winter break, so kind of being a bit more resolute at the back and keeping that clean sheet. But as you say, there wasn't a lot of entertainment on show from both sides.
Yeah, I mean the clean sheet was never in doubt, was it? After the warm up, for the great work done by the goalkeeping team. But yeah, you're right in that kind of term. Trying to take whatever positives you can from it. It's a clean sheet on the road. Don't know how many other clean sheets we've had on the road this season. I think the last one may have been away to Stirling. No, away to St Johnstone, sorry, back in September, I believe. So that's a good thing to kind of get, there as well. I do think that like Jess Murphy at the back, with like Fiona Walker were solid. Kaylee Healy was playing back there as well. I think Euan Murphy actually had a decent game kind of in like defensive midfield as well. But I think it's kind of beyond that kind of like, even at that beyond like the halfway line, it was just not kind of like coming off for us. And yeah, it's kind of a scrappy game, Ewan, in all honesty. Couple of weeks now though until we've got our next one. I think we play Gartcairn at home on the 3rd of March, which will be a good game. They always are. Gartcairn are on a bit of a resurgence as well, and there's a wee added bit of nick between the games because having played them in the championship and that a couple of years ago and stuff. So we're definitely going to need to sharpen up by then, because they're a team who are punishing others. I mean, they just beat Boroughmuir from home last weekend as well. So it's somebody who we're going to have to be very wary of, and we'll need to be, playing well to beat. But yeah, a couple of weeks until then, work on a couple of things, and hopefully we'll be back firing in no time.
Yeah, just kind of touching on that game, as you mentioned, really good result for Gartcairn at the weekend, winning away at Boroughmuir, kind of, albeit as dropping points at the weekend has seen that gap to second place open up to 6 points. But just looking at the fixtures when the league is back in action, Kilmarnock are at home to Queen's Park, who are runaway leaders at the top of the league. So you're hoping Queen's Park can maybe do us a little bit of a favour, and we can do our business against Gartcairn and hopefully try and claw that gap back and get right back in contention for that playoff spot. But yeah, if you are at a loose end in a couple of weeks on the Sunday afternoon, get yourself along and watch the ladies in action.
Next up for the Lions is a relegation 6-pointer as they travel to the Highlands to take on Ross County, with a chance to go off the foot of the table, although probably unlikely regarding goal difference. Ewan, this one has got the makings of a classic or just one filled with heartbreak, right?
Yeah, I mean, you say that. I think if we win by 2 clear goals, we get off the foot of the
Was that a
table.
shot? I thought it was at
Yeah,
least four.
so I don't think it's absolutely out with the realms of possibility. However, if you do look at the amount of goals we've scored away from home this season, you would say that that's very unlikely that we're going to go and score two in the one game. But it's very, very finely poised. It's amazing what one result can do. Even listening to some of the coverage from pundits and things like that over the weekend, they had us nailed on. We were already down. We were gone. We were cut adrift. And all of a sudden, we're back in the mix. We're just one win, and we know what this division's like. If you go and string a couple of back-to-back wins together, you can glide up the table. Look at Motherwell, for example, in recent weeks, who have picked up a couple of results and we're all of a sudden back in the mix for the top six. So it just shows you how big a difference a couple of wins back to back can make in this league. And let's be honest, I heard a couple of folks saying, "Oh, a point wouldn't be the worst result." Nah, let's go and rack the pressure on Ross County. Need to go and rack the pressure on. Obviously, they've made a change at the top. Derek Adams left just after that Motherwell game. Derek Adams, a man that united Scottish football more than Steve Clarke, with some of the comments he was coming out with in the press, and certainly chatting to Ross, who does the County Corner podcast. He couldn't believe that Derek Adams had even lasted as long with some of the comments. He actually thought he might be out the door after the game at our place, the 2-each draw, just at the end of January there, because of the manner of the performance. Ross kind of mentioned how it was a bit of a robbery that they came away with a point that night. And on the basis of the second half in particular, you could probably say that. I think we created ample opportunities in that game. But yeah, Don Cowie's come in there. Don Cowie's a legend there. He's had 2 spells as a player. He's been assistant manager to Malky Mackay and Derek Adams. And again, if you do like to go and listen to other clubs' podcasts, the County Corner, they had a really good interview with Don Cowie earlier in the season, which was really good in depth with him. So might give you a bit of background to what he's looking to do in his coaching career. But yeah, they have. Certainly, I watched their game against Rangers at Ibrox and I thought they gave a decent account of themselves. The boy Wickens in goals looks a pretty decent acquisition from them. He broke a record actually in that game at Ibrox for the most saves in a game. And I do think Don Cowie's gone back to more of the players that were there already prior to Derek Adams being in the door. And yeah, it's a difficult one to predict because Ross County at home this season, I think they've got the worst home record in the league. 3 wins, 2 draws, 6 defeats. In fact, is it the worst home record or is ours the worst home record?
We're probably we're level on points with them, but I think 2 games we've played more.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so joint worst, but technically slightly better than ours on points per game. But yeah, third lowest scorers in the league, worst defensive record in the league. However, that's not saying we're fantastic. We are the lowest scorers in the league, and we've got the second worst defensive record. So yes, it's a difficult one to call, but I do think it's going to come down to whoever gets that first goal. Both teams haven't gained a lot of points from losing positions this season. Ross County just 1 point from losing positions. Ourselves, we've only gained 3. However, 2 of those have come against Ross County. So a draw up there near the start of the season, and then the draw just there coming from behind twice. Players that we're probably going to need to be very wary of. I think it's pretty obvious to say Simon Murray is their top goal scorer. He's got 7 in the league this year, 3 of which have come against ourselves, 2 very, very recently. He's an absolute workhorse at the top end of the park, and certainly getting him behind, he's got a bit of pace about him. So depending on what our combination is at centre back, we want to maybe try and restrict that space in behind for him to operate. Euan and Angus, another one. Obviously, he has signed that pre-contract agreement at Hearts, but he's got 3 assists this season. He is their creative force. I've mentioned this multiple times. He does have a very good delivery from set plays, from open play as well. And Danda does typically tend to be given a little bit more licence to roam about. Looking at the last couple of games, they have played a back 3. The boy Brown at right wing back, who I believe we've got on loan from Blackburn, if I'm right in saying, he's got a bundle of energy to get up and down the park. and they've kind of been playing more with a front two, and Brophy's played the last couple of games as well. And Brophy is a pretty typical shoot on sight striker, so you want to try and limit opportunities for him to pull the trigger, because he's certainly one that doesn't hesitate to do so. But I think it's a tough game, but one that we shouldn't be scared of. I think we had them on the ropes a lot in the game recently at our place, and we should have taken advantage of it. We should have put them to the sword that night with the opportunities we created. But I think on the flip side, if you look earlier in the season, Ross County would say the same thing about when we went up there. They would class that as a robbery of a result when we went up there and snatched the point late on when Bruce Anderson got that equaliser. But they're in a kind of right sticky patch just now. 10 games without a win, 2 draws in amongst it. And I kind of spoke about it in recent weeks for ourselves. That run has to come to an end at some point. So don't read too much into that, is what I would say. It always gives me a little bit of trepidation when I'm going into predictions for these games, given that we are typically in the past have been a gift for teams who are on a bad run. And we typically do tend to be generous and giving teams some points, well-needed points. But this is a game we just can't afford to do that. I do think it's going to be a bit of a battle at the weekend, but certainly if you look at our performance on Saturday, we've got the qualities to play that sort of game and have a bit of a battle. But you're hoping that we continue to play in the manner we have in recent weeks in terms of creating opportunities, having those creative players on the park to create those chances, and hopefully you can take advantage. And Ross County have conceded a lot of goals this season. They've been a bit leaky at the back in recent weeks. In particular, I think it was 5 they conceded at Motherwell, 3 at Ibrox there, which most teams could easily go and concede 3 at Ibrox and a couple at the weekend at Dundee. So we need to be ruthless, a bit like we were at the weekend, ruthless when we do get opportunities. And it would be such a lift to even just get level on points with them. But see if we could go and leapfrog them and get into 11th. Can you imagine the lift that would give the place? It, as I say again, could be a real season-defining moment.
Yeah, I think the point you've made there about the goals that they've been leaking recently, you look at 3 at home to Partick Thistle as well, a team that we've just put out of the cup following it. Obviously, we went 2-0 down, but we've shown that we can cause teams with that kind of quality issues and stuff like that. And it's massive that our attacking intent is there from the start and we can try and get at Ross County, because I do think that we have players who are more than capable enough to punish that back line. It's a massive, massive game for the likes of your Joel Newbleys, for the likes of Stephen Kelly, your Teddy Yengies and stuff like that. Not to discredit, like, we have to be solid at the back as well, but we really need to go in the front foot here. And I think that the thing is that we've bemoaned the lacking of attacking intent this season. If we go up there and we try and hold off and we don't go for it and we don't look as if we've tried to win the game, then that is when the fans could end up being a little bit dismayed. But we've got a good support travelling up, I believe, from our own GS convoy. I believe there's about 12, 13, 14 of us heading up, a bus going up as well, and then many others making their own ways up to Dingwall for what's set to be a cracking game. You look at the SPFL weekly schedule, there's no game on Sky in that. Is this not like the perfect one you like to show between two teams who are both more than capable of taking goals off of one another? I think this game's going to be a good kind of advert for this kind of Scottish game, in all honesty, just in terms of I've got a feeling it's going to be kind of an exciting one. But the more excited I'm getting for this, the more kind of build it up, it means it's going to be definitely just like a 0-0 or a 1-0, isn't it? But yeah, hopefully we've had some good joy over the years at Dingwall. I believe that we've won at least once every time that we've went up there. A couple of notable wins being the 3-2 with Tom Parks' last minute winner, and then obviously that 4-1 in the first season that Ross County came back up, that were in the same division. So yeah, hopefully there's one that we can add to at this weekend as well. But in terms of personnel, you and I've kind of talked about how massive it is for us to be having attacking intent. Do you really make any changes from that team that played against St Mirren there?
Yeah, just kind of touching on our record up there. I'm sure Ross from the county corner will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've only lost 4 or 5 games up in Dingwall in our history. So, yeah, we do typically do okay up there. We do typically get results, albeit not all the time our performance to match it, but we have been very good at getting points up there in the past, and you're hoping that trend kind of continues at the weekend, touch wood. But yeah, in terms of our team at the weekend, I don't know how much the selection on Saturday was dictated by availability of players. The likes of Sean Donnellan wasn't in amongst the squad for a kind of place at centre back in that game. Sangari obviously filling in on the left hand side of the back four. I think James Penrice has had to go under the knife or potential to go under the knife in terms of operations, so he'd be a massive, massive miss if that kind of prolongs over the course of the remainder of the season. David Carson, I think, will probably play in again that sitting role. I thought he had a decent performance again at the weekend with Jason Holton there, and obviously that saw Shinnie playing that 3 in behind. If possible, I'd like to see the likes of Dan Mackay or Stephen Bradley back in amongst it, depending on their fitness, their availability, more so for the pace. Probably my one criticism of Shinnie playing in that 3 in behind is that he doesn't maybe have the legs to go and beat a man or run in behind, but just having that bit more directness and somebody like Dan Mackay or Stephen Bradley who can carry the ball, get in behind, I think that would be a big positive to having that 3. I mean, at this moment in time, Tete Yengi's in possession of the jersey in terms of the centre forward position. As much as that would surprise a lot of people, given how much folk pleaded for Bruce Anderson to be in amongst the side. But as I say, I think Tete Yengi's performances have kind of merited that position of the team, and I fully expect to see him playing in there again. And as we say, we've seen Joel kind of pick up in recent weeks, and yeah, if you can get Joel isolating one of their full-backs, he might actually get a little bit of space in behind as well, given that they play that back 3 typically. You might get a little bit of space to operate in those channels. So yeah, that would probably be my one change, would be maybe bringing out the likes of an Andrew Shinnie, and that's not a criticism in his performances, but also the fact that he kind of looked like he was limping a little bit after the game when he was coming off the park, obviously kind of congratulating his teammates, but it did look like he was carrying a little bit of a knock, so be interesting to see what happens with that. But other than maybe a change in the back 4, depending on availability, and that one, I think it probably will be the same starting 11.
Yeah, can't really argue with that with the personnel kind of available and stuff. And if they can continue that performance up against St Mirren, then yeah, that's completely fine to me in all honesty. But yeah, are you optimistic for this one, Euan? Then we'll go to your prediction. What are you kind of thinking of here?
I was absolutely convinced for the first time I was convinced, by the way, with my prediction last week. I went to the game, and as the game wore on, when we went 1-0 up, when we saved it, I was like, yeah, I'm really content with that. I predicted a win. I felt really confident. I just don't know what to expect at the weekend. I don't know if it's going to be a classic off you've got your hopes up all of a sudden and they come crashing back down with a vengeance, or if this is the start of something absolutely beautiful in our history in terms of a great escape. I'm going to back the team. I'm going to back them, and I'm going to back them to get off the foot of the table. I'm going for 2-0.
I don't think the goal difference is nearly as close as you think it is.
I believe it's 2 clear goals.
So Ross County have scored 20 goals and they've conceded 43. We've only scored 16 and conceded 42. Some dead air whilst we do the maths to try and figure this out. So they're minus 23. We are minus.
So if we win by 2 clear goals, we go above them. Because their goal difference will come to minus 25 and ours would go up to minus 24.
I think this 16 has really thrown me off. Either way.
Just look at the goal difference.
Yeah. Mine's is just like it's just got it doesn't have like the actual number. It's got the 2 next to each other. That's me showing how good my math skills are, to be fair.
Welcome to Talk Livi Arithmetic with Euan Rankin and
Next
Angus
week we'll
McGregor.
do a big game of countdown and we're going to just be so.
Yeah, safe to say we will never ever be in the countdown studio, given that has taken so much effort to calculate. But I was bang on the money. We would get off the foot of the table by winning by 2 clear goals. So, yep, I'm going for it, 2-0.
Fair enough. Will we keep clean sheets in 2 successive games? I don't personally believe so. Now that you've brought up that a 2-goal win could send us above them, I don't know if I should go for that. Because I had a score in my head. I'm going to stick with the original one. And I'm going to predict that we don't leapfrog them just yet. I'm going to say it's going to be 3-2 to us.
3-2, goal fest.
Yeah.
Goal fest from the 2 lowest scorers in the league.
Hey, well, the last one was 2 each.
That is fair. Yeah, that is fair.
Extra,
2 lowest scorers in the league, but also 2 of the worst defences. So it kind of, caveats itself, doesn't it, a little bit?
I was humming and hawing of, do I go for a 4-2? But I was like, that's maybe a little bit too preemptive. But yeah, I'll stick with 3-2 for the moment.
Here's hoping we're correct, because what a lift that would give both the supporters and the players in particular going into the remainder of the season. And as we spoke about, it's a massive run of games for us. But if you are at the loose end, I appreciate it is the longest away day that we need to do over the course of the season. But get yourselves up to Dingwall if you can, because I think every fan, everybody that's in that away end will give the players a lift at the weekend for what is a huge, huge game. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. We really appreciate you tuning in every week and would love to hear your feedback. You can leave us a review on iTunes or drop us a message on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, so simply search for Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there, and any shares and likes are always appreciated. All our episodes are available on all the usual podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube and would love for you to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week, and thanks to all our listeners for tuning in as always. Let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team, and hopefully see a lot of you up in Dingwall for that huge game.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, no Livingston, it's up to Ammonvale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, no Livingston. We love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Ammonville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the